Hello and welcome to Cricket8 Podcast. I'm Megha, joined by Rob Barron, and we are to discuss about the World Test Championship points our expectations are concerned and who have outside chance. All right, Rob, let's start with India, perched at the top of the table. Do you mind talking about India or should we talk about the other teams?
We've spoken about India before. I don't mind talking about India. Well, firstly, let's start off by saying that the whole competition is a fiasco because the point system doesn't work. Nobody plays each other the right amount of times. We're talking about how many sports worldwide, and you can include every sport you can think of in this, have got a table that looks like that, with India 9 games, England 13 games, Bangladesh 4 games, Sri Lanka 4 games, and they're trying to say that that's fair, are they? You've got to start playing the same number of matches. You've got to play against the same amount of teams in the similar places, and have a point system that isn't a complete joke. So let's assume, and it's a huge assumption, that anybody cares about this table and that it makes any sense at all. India are kind of quite rightly top of it. They've won 6 out of 9 and drawn one.
Yeah.
Seems fine. Um, like I've said many times, Australia and England drew 2-2 in a really good Ashes series that England would have won 3-2 if it didn't rain. And England got absolutely hammered as far as the point system goes because they didn't bowl very fast or they didn't bowl enough spin or whatever. So that's the stuff that has to be cut out to start with, just to make it moderately fair. And then at the bottom are England, because they declare in stupid places, don't play test match cricket and win half and lose half. That seems absolutely correct with the way England play, win half, lose half. Bangladesh have only played 4 and got stuffed in 3 of them, so fine. And the West Indies are bottom and they have been pretty crap, so that's fine too. Then all the other teams haven't played very many. Australia played loads, done fine. India have an extremely good team in home conditions and a pretty good team away from home. It does feel like it's very difficult for any of the big teams to win away against any of the other big teams, and that they should probably weight the points slightly differently than they do now. I couldn't tell you how they do it now. It just seems pretty random to me. And interestingly, I'm looking at the Crick Info table now, and they call draw as no result. There's no such thing as a draw in the World Test Championship table. But yeah, India are good. West Indies are bad. I don't think England are 7th best at Test matches. I think that's probably a bit unfair. So the table isn't a particularly good reflection of how good the teams are. It's okay. I think it seems like it's a lot of mucking about over a long time before you get to the only game that anyone cares about, which is the final. And then people would think, England particularly, wouldn't it have been good if we'd have actually tried a bit harder to play the point system better, and we could be playing in a final against India at Lords or against Australia in wherever they're going to do it. So it's a shame that certain teams, and it's mainly England's fault, aren't taking it seriously as a competition. The final is definitely a good thing, and when you are World Test champions, that feels good, right? If you're holding that mace up and saying we've won the championship, brilliant. It's just, it needs to be sorted out so it's a proper competition. It used to be, I remember when England were a shambles. I mean, England have been a shambles most of my life, but when England were a shambles at Test, they had a very attainable but difficult target of being the number 1 Test nation in the world. And that seemed to be, you had to perform in India, you had to win your home series, and you had to win well against the teams you were expected to beat. And then the ranking system for that seems fair enough. And it took England, 3 years to get to the top when they had a very, very good team. And that was all great. But now that doesn't really matter. It's all about who is the champions of the World Test Championship. Again, I can't make sense of the table. The win percentage thing is fine, but then you get hammered for not bowling quick enough. It does suit team. I mean, South Africa, to be fair, aren't what are they? Lost 3 out of 6 and they're in the middle of that table. They don't have any spinners, and that punishes you. Yeah, we were talking about Maharaj the other day, but if your home conditions mean you bowl 2 spinners a lot of the time, you're not going to be in trouble for your overrate. You just aren't, even if you're changing the field all the time. Whereas if your home conditions are pace, 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 you're much more likely to get in trouble because it takes longer. Simple, like how long time lasts. There's a lesson for everyone. Um, so yeah, it's a difficult table to decipher. If you asked any cricket fan walking past wherever you are now, Megha, and wherever I am here, who is fifth in the World Test Championship table, or who is top and who is bottom, I don't think anybody knows, and I don't think anybody cares. Um, it looks like it'll end up being India against Australia in the final.
Hmm.
Um, and that feels like a very fair final to me. That feels like the best two teams. I don't think many would have arguments that those two are the best two. And then we'll watch it. It would be great if it was either a three-test series for the final rather than a one-off
Hmm.
game. You could organise it nowadays where it's one at home, one away, and one neutral, and see how you get on, or three neutral, or you you do a kind of timeless test match and go, right, if it rains, we're just going to make the time up and have,
Hmm.
because even if it's perfect weather, test matches don't last 5 days now anyway, whoever's playing in
Yeah.
them, whichever two teams, because nobody, and this is partly England's fault tactically and partly the proliferation of all these T20 tournaments, and people are no longer learning how to play the forward defensive. They're learning how to whack it into the middle of next week. That's how kids are brought up now. But nobody can bat time anymore in test matches. So how many
Hmm.
times it used to be team A needs 10 wickets on the last day, team B has to block out for the draw, and that would be about 50-50 whether they could do it. And now, if team B can't win the match and all they've got to play for is the draw, they just fold. They just go, oh, we can't do that. We can't just block all day long. What's the point? When was the last time you saw somebody properly dig in with no rain about and just block out a draw? And that used to be a beautiful thing to watch from a purist
Hmm.
point of view. It's like bowlers tearing their hair out, steaming in, loads of pressure, men round the bat, the scoreboard. The only things that matters is how many wickets we can take today. That's how we win the game. So run scoring doesn't matter. It brings a whole new dynamic to Test match cricket that has been deleted. It is gone now. There's unless you're playing in a total highway, some of these Rawalpindi pitches and the odd UAE one that you think, well, no one's ever going to get out on this pitch, and then it's up to England to make stupid declarations to get results, which England will do. They've missed with one or two of their declarations in the last 3 or 4 years, but it's definitely made cricket more exciting if you like results. But the draw's gone out of the game now, so there's nothing stopping. I mean, what would be the worst possible ending for this rubbish competition is if you have a final, it rains, and then they share it, and then really nobody cares. So once again, cricket has to organise itself slightly better and have a test championship that is fair and everybody can win if they play the best cricket. If you want to punish people for bowling slowly, I think that is definitely reasonable. It's a thing in cricket, but
Hmm.
no other sport would accept this. The currency of winning football matches is goals and scoring more goals than the opposition. And if it's a tie on points at the end of the season, then it'll be goal difference or head to head or something to do with being better than the other team. Whereas cricket can go, well, they bowled a bit quicker than you, so they win. I mean, that is just, you might as well spin a coin or draw lots or have an arm wrestle at the end of the series or something, like sort it out, cricket.
Hmm. So I have a number of counter arguments. One point of yours, I acknowledge the draws have reduced. There are
Just
numbers
one.
to substantiate that, yeah, because it took until August for the first draw of the year to arrive. That was between West Indies and South Africa. Now, talking about the points being docked in case of England, that's 19 to be precise. And had those points not been docked, at the moment they are around 35%. Wins, 36.54% to be precise, and had those 19 points not been deducted, it would have been 48.72. Still not good enough for them to be strongly in contention because both India and Australia are 60 plus. India have around 68% and Australia with 60%. So, again, coming back to the points where I do not agree with you, considering how long a test match runs, because unlike other sports, and correct me if I'm wrong there. There are not a lot of sports that runs for that long. In case of a test match, it goes on for 5 days, and unless it's a WTC finals, in that case, there's an additional day, weather notwithstanding. And so, for something that runs for that long, time has to be factored in, because if it goes on and on, even beyond the allotted time for the day, it is not really, you're not really respecting the audience. You're taking more of their time. So probably that's why the point system was brought in. Maybe the weight that's given to the point system for the delays at the moment is too harsh. Maybe there could be lesser points being taken away, but then with teams like England not taking 19 points being taken away as seriously, because even after the Ashes came the India Test series, and spinners were in play, and yet England lost some points because of slow over rate. So again, that has to be factored in. So that's one important consideration. Also, the fact that World Test Championship, already there was a cricket test calendar in place. It was introduced to make tests more relevant. So it was kind of forced into the calendar. So there's no way, probably, even going ahead in the future, where all teams would play equal number of games. There are finances also to be considered. Not every team can afford to play a lot of tests. So what is the solution? We've highlighted the problems, but what could be a potential solution for this WTC points table to be taken seriously?
Yeah, so the ICC has absolutely boatloads of money, right? So it just needs to dish it out in a fairer manner than it does now. So the fact that some countries are financially crippled compared to others leads to the whole thing not being fair. And
Yeah.
sure, some countries are going to have better infrastructures for cricket, and that is a problem that for some places literally can't be helped. If some places got loads of money and everybody wants to play cricket, India cricket is the biggest sport by a long way, whereas some of the other countries, cricket is not the biggest consideration. It certainly isn't in England anymore. Australia has other sports it competes with. So does South Africa. Rugby's big in a lot of these countries. All of that stuff aside, cricket could do better at dishing the money out and making it fair. So when there's a World Cup, for example, in football, so there's lots of internationals that they have, and that how they give them context in football is they have leagues that mean that it helps your qualification for the big tournaments.
Yeah.
And so they try and do away with friendlies because whilst 30 years ago people might have cared about friendlies, nobody in football cares about the result of a friendly anymore. It's not even a thing. No one ever talks
Yeah.
about it. So it's all about giving matches context. And what cricket tried to do is they said, look, we're losing test match cricket because we're putting all our money and attention and TV into the short forms of the game. And they keep telling us that that's what people want nowadays because of TikTok and the internet and whatever else kids look at. Fine. But cricket is still a really brilliant game in the long format. In certain places, they manage to sell it out. And this could help with loads of ways you could get people sitting down in the seats for test matches. You've got to be a lot more selective than that. Mash is a very good authority on this sort of thing for the West Indies. It's like, well, if they aren't turning up in this ground, let's do it at this ground, or let's
Hmm.
incentivize people to come. Let's give tickets for kids for free, and
Yeah.
it's not the West Indies that then has to pay for that, or Dominica, or Guyana, or Jamaica, or whoever. It's the ICC that has to foot that bill to raise the profile of Test cricket and go, look, we're going to put some bums on seats here, and and in England, they take the piss out of the paying public because they know it's a supply and demand thing, right? I paid 130 quid to go and watch England play 3 weeks ago, and I'm paying 90 quid to go and watch them play tomorrow. Um, where the result is probably going to be, you're pretty sure who's going to win this test match. But we go, I'm a mug for paying the money. But there is lots of ways that the ICC can step up and get people into cricket grounds, and therefore every test match has context. So the World Test Championship in essence is a good idea, but show this table to people and say, right, Pakistan have got 22 points, South Africa have got 28 points, Sri Lanka have got 24 points, England have 57. So England are 7th, Sri Lanka are 4th. Who's winning? India, 74 points. Brilliant. How many points have Australia got? 90. Where are they? Second. It doesn't make any sense. And then they go, well, it's a percentage, isn't it, of how many times you win? And they go, well, not really, because we changed this and we add that. And then you've lost all cricket fans. And cricket has been doing this to its fans forever, as kind of, unless you've got a further maths degree, you can't make sense of the game sometimes. And we have it with Duckworth Lewis Stern. We have it with the rain targets, where people ask me every time, like, what's this going to be if we lose 4 overs? I'm like, I don't know. I can't work the bloody thing out. And I spend my whole life looking at maths and cricket. It's probably a testament to my stupidity that I can't work it out. But if someone like me can't work it out, who should be working it out as part of my job, how is the general cricket fan going to make any sense of that ridiculous algorithm that you can't access if you Google it? You can't find it on the internet. Give cricket a bit more of a cricket supporters a bit more of a chance. And cricket's answer has been to dumb things down and make everything short format, and the 100, which we've spoken about, ad nauseum, as being a ridiculous competition. They try and dumb things down. Test cricket has stood for what? Hundreds of years of being, or long format cricket has been around for hundreds of years, with people going to watch it because it's really interesting. So I don't quite know what the answer is, because as you just said, you've got 5 days to
Yeah.
get one game in, and no other sport has that, where it lasts 5 days. So they have to be better with the calendar. But one thing that they could do to start with is go, right, the World Test Championship is subsidized by the ICC. We've got loads of money from TV revenue and all these T20 tournaments that we have something to do with. We have enough cash to make it so that Bangladesh can adequately host test matches at home, and that the West Indies can across the islands, and that Pakistan can act. The other elephant in the room is Pakistan and India, who's got one of the best rivalries in the history of sport, don't bloody play each other. Or they have to play in certain places where there's 6 months of deliberations before they're allowed to get on the park. Like, cricket has to do better with that as well. So I know I've kind of answered your questions with a load more questions, but make the World Test Championship simpler and make it fairer. And if that means that the ICC has to put its hand in his pocket and say, look, we made 250,000 quid the other day from a test match at Lords because people were paying 130 quid a ticket and buying pints for £9, right? Whereas in some countries, that's never going to happen. It's the public aren't going to spend that sort of, because it's
Yeah.
in some countries it's way too much to even consider. And it's the reason why they charge it is because people will pay it, right? It's simple business. I understand it. I've been stupid enough to spend 9 quid on a pint. It doesn't sit very well with me. But then they can say, right, we made all this money. We are now going to use some of this money to help us fill the ground next time we're in wherever, Jamaica or Rawalpindi, or, India doesn't have the problems a lot of the time, but there's been plenty of test matches where the public just aren't that bothered in India. And you see, with how the game's going,
Yeah.
and you look and you're not, it's not a good look for cricket to have empty stands. And cricket has enough in its power to make those stands fuller, and they've just got to stop being so greedy. And most of these cricket questions that we talk about when it comes to the infrastructure of the game is because the powers that be are greedy and they want more money. Whereas somebody there should be thinking about, well, actually, what is the best for the future of the game? And they had a go by putting the World Test Championship in to kind of make Test cricket have more context and be more interesting for people. But with the tournament that they set up, they failed because nobody cares about it. Nobody understands how the points work. So they must go back to the drawing board and try again. And helping all of the test nations, I mean, there's only 9 that are in this World Test Championship. But there are other nations that play test matches. So why aren't they allowed? They've got to sort this out. And whether that's a 2-division thing because of time, and you can be promoted and relegated, that's good for context. Saying, right, if we win this test match, we're going to stay in the top division, and then we get to play against, Australia and India and England. Or if we get relegated, we're going to play Ireland. And, if Zimbabwe are allowed to play test match cricket again, ICC can help them out. If there was promotions and relegations, that gives things more context. It gives more games where there's something on the line. Because after the Ashes, it felt a bit like And England almost said it. We don't care about the World Test Championship. That's for other people. And Australia, like, well, we do. So, it's no. There's no fans talking about the championship standings, are there? And that's
Probably
part of the
because
issue.
So probably because cricket fans are not used to that stopgap sort of scenario in a tournament. We've seen 50 overs T20 World Cups where you see matches happening back to back, so the momentum builds up, and you are interested by the time the final starts. But again, if we follow the promotion and relegation idea, if that gets followed, you see teams like West Indies, Sri Lanka that are at the moment languishing on the bottom half of the table. So if they get relegated and are left to play with the likes of Ireland, or for that matter, any other team, that's Zimbabwe, to cite an example, how do they earn money? In case of West Indies, similarly in case of Sri Lanka, they are dependent a lot on the money that they earn from India, England tours. So that would not happen because India would not look beyond, and it would make sense for India and England to not look beyond playing series that do not win them World Test Championship points. Because as it is, at least in case of England, they're already playing a lot of tests every year, and that has been the scenario for at least a decade now. Before you answer that, we'd also take in some questions because you're all armed, and I'm looking for some confrontation there. Simple math says what makes sense to Indian fans. You'll have to clarify. Alston has been making some really pertinent points. What he says here is, should people really prioritize saving Test cricket rather than saving the sport of cricket itself? For most of the supporting, or rather sporting fans that hate cricket, they do so because of the stereotypes from Test cricket, and that's why probably the shorter versions sprung up to attract more viewers. Vignesh says he thinks England can win the upcoming Ashes if Jofra is fit. No one knows says there used to be a tool that you could download from the ICC, and some not so polite words to suggest that that has been removed. And again, Sniper says England knows they are not that good, so they don't care and lose 19 points. uh, Dex says that, Rob, do you think South Africa can reach the final? So, because we've got a very busy test calendar ahead and we just have 8 minutes to cover as much as we can. So, I've taken as many questions as I can. Answer whatever you want, Rob.
Okay, what was the? Can you just flash the questions along the bottom again, please, Mega?
All right.
The
So, let's
second
start with
one
this
was
one.
like
Yeah.
basically. So this one, that's just a sweeping statement that's not based on any fact. That second line, for most of the sporting fans that hate cricket, do it because of the stereotypes from Test cricket. That's not a thing. That has to be backed up with some sort of rational sense. So
Maths.
I don't agree with that one. Should people really prioritise saving Test cricket rather than saving the sport of cricket itself? Cricket is absolutely thriving because there's
Hmm.
loads of money in giving TV easy to package 1 hour, 2 hour, or 3 or 4 hour, or in the case of the IPL, 5 hour games of cricket, which people can watch and cheer on some people in coloured clothing. There's not much context for a lot of these tournaments. There's one in the Cayman Islands going on right now. I don't care about it. Warner's slogging out for 12 or 14 every night and getting whatever he gets for it, fine. That's not cricket as far as I'm concerned. Sure, if you come home from work and you want to watch, Brathwaite bowling at Warner, or just somebody who used to be quite good at cricket who isn't very good anymore, Ben Cutting stinking the place out in some Tin Pot League somewhere, all good, no problem. You're still watching cricket, it's fine. But Test match cricket is still the pinnacle as far as the skills that you need go, because Test matches, you must be able to soak up pressure, then put the pressure back onto your opponents. The momentum has a chance to swing much more slowly rather than wild swings, and you react. So tactics are a thing. Playing for time is a thing. Waiting until you've got the better conditions and using them, exploiting them, all that kind of stuff. There's so many games within the game in Test match cricket, which is why it's
Yeah.
brilliant. So if Test match cricket dies, which is becoming a concern, then the whole of cricket is going to suffer. Cricket will end up just being a product rather than a sport that has any context. It will just be, right, here's a load of rich people whacking sixes again, and you'll occasionally get Bumrah or Rashid Khan or someone that can stop them a bit. But to go back to your point about what if West Indies and Sri Lanka end up in the second division, then they don't get to play the good teams. Well, what is worse for Test match cricket is if Sri Lanka and and we've spoken about how much hope there is for Sri Lanka and the West Indies, but that West Indies top five at the moment looks quite bad, and Sri Lanka have pretty big issues around some of their pace bowling, keeping players fit, and where is the spine of this batting team, right? So if they, what would be worse than West Indies and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Ireland and Zimbabwe fighting it out in a league, which would be competitive, is if they play India and lose 3-0, play New Zealand, lose 3-0, play England and lose 3-0, then cricket becomes no one cares about it in the country because they just get walloped all the time. So, and this is what Australia does. Like, Australia's got a very good, healthy state of cricket at the moment. But the time when we beat Australia, I was over there when we won 3-1 2011, was it? And by the time it was a certainty that England were going to win, there were no Australians left in the ground. And every Australian you spoke to in the pub, taxi driver or whatever, that was giving you loads on the way there, didn't watch the cricket all of a sudden. They didn't know anything about it. Oh, they prefer rugby. Or, oh, no, sorry, mate. No, we watch the rugby. No, don't do cricket. And then you go back there 2 years later and Australia are hammering us 5-0. You can't get a seat anywhere. Everybody is a massive cricket fan. So people want to see their teams winning. So if the West Indies and Sri Lanka, and they're the ones we're really concerned about, if the West Indies and Sri Lanka just get battered by the good teams and they only play the good teams, then the fans will leave in their droves and they will only be bothered about the T20 stuff. And that is where cricket would have a huge problem. So that's why I like the idea of two divisions. The guy that's called Simple Maths, or the lady that's called Simple Maths, that's what the World Test Championship needs, simple maths. I can't remember the question or the point that they asked, but that's what it needs.
This
What
is
else you got?
exactly the point that he was trying to make. He thinks that it's only the Indians that care about it because they've been finding themselves in the top two for the two cycles now.
Yeah, it makes sense to them because they're top, but they haven't got the most points.
And consistent.
I don't think it's. I don't think you can make an argument to say that India aren't
Mm.
one of the best two teams in Test cricket. And if it does end up being India Australia, somebody said, can South Africa win it?
Yeah.
They've got a lot of work to do. Their team isn't good enough. Look at it on paper; it's just not good enough. Their batting is fragile now. I think they've overbowled Rabada, and the pace attack is too fragile in terms of literally keeping their best players fit because they all play too much T20 cricket. That's why.
Hmm. So there's some more questions that we take up now. Sid says that saving test cricket has turned into a philosophical question. The unfortunate reality is that most people watch sports for pure entertainment, unlike us who are invested more deeply into it. Now, we also have to factor in how the world has changed with social media and with the influx of social media in the way that it has happened in the last decade. There's so much vying for people's attention. There's so much to do for people at any given point of time. So dedicating 5 days to test cricket is anyway going to be a challenge for somebody who's not as invested into the sport. Say, for example, in golf, a tournament, a championship, quote unquote, gets over in 4 days. So there are other sports as well that get over quicker. So again, where do you see things going from here? Although in the last few years it's been more about ODI and their relevance than test cricket. Thankfully, with the World Test Championships happening, that conversation around whether it makes sense or not, that has faded a bit. And just to contradict your point, because I've been urged to contradict you, remember last time there were people very happy when they thought that there was something confrontational happening. So when West Indies defeat Australia at home and the series goes to 1-all, probably that gets people excited. That makes for a good story. That makes people like Brian Lara shed a tear or two. Similarly, if you remember that India Bangladesh series where India toured Bangladesh, and again, Bangladesh at the moment is not in the top four for that matter. But then they did give a strong fight to India. Both the tests, India had to really labor, work hard, grind it out to win those tests. So probably you do want such teams clash because once in a while when it's the lower ranked team toppling the upper or the higher ranked team, it makes for a really good story and it gets everybody interested, even people who would otherwise have not been interested in test cricket. So yeah, and just because I'm concluding every remark of mine with a question, so let me spot the one for now. So no one knows one thing for sure. He believes that there were supposed to be two divisions, but the weaker teams refused it, and understandably so.
Yeah, because of money. So
Yeah.
again, it's up to the ICC, and cricket is very badly run. It's up to the ICC to make sure that the reason why games happen or don't happen is not always money. And in cricket at the moment, they're so blinkered by the cash around that they've forgotten this. So almost every cricket decision at the top level is made because of money. Unfortunately, that's what it is. And it's TV money or it's franchise money or whatever it is. And because they've all the fat cats are at the same trough trying to get their greedy trotters on as much cash as they can, they forget about the actual game that we're trying to watch and just go, well, how do we get the most money out of this? And therefore, India, England, and Australia must play each other as many times as possible because more people will watch that. We're more likely to get money if England play as many tests as possible because they fill grounds and they charge £9 a pint. Lovely jubbly, aren't we great? Actually, there's lots of countries that you've got to think about, and it's not just the 9 that are in the World Test Championship. We want the game to grow everywhere, and the they're sick in the head, the ICC, of trying to limit teams from playing in World Cups, saying, right, we're just going to have 8 teams because that's where all the money is. Cricket can't grow if you shut the door on all these other countries. And why can't you be a fan of cricket in your country if you happen to live outside one of these 9 or 12 countries? We need to see more Papua New Guinea playing and Namibia and all this sort of stuff. Nepal, all of these countries where, look at the story of Afghanistan, and we haven't even mentioned
Yeah.
them yet. They've got an excellent test match team in their own conditions, but they don't play any test cricket because
Hmm.
because of money. All the players that are good for Afghanistan are on this constant revolving carousel of T20 and T10 cricket. So we want other countries to come in because that's how you make cricket stop cricket from dying and make it a bigger game. It is possible, but it needs the powers that be to stop thinking only about money. But unfortunately, it's not just cricket that has this issue. It's kind of every industry in the world is the people at the top that have got all the cash want more. And until somebody comes in and runs it, and it feels like that should be ex-players rather than rich business people, um, can just have a bit of sense and go, well, cricket would be better if this happened, but it might cost us a few, rupees or pounds or dollars in the short term, but in 5 years, won't we be in a much better position? They can still, drive whatever cars they want and have nice holidays and all that stuff. They just need to think about it a little bit more and sacrifice short-term greed for long-term riches as far as the game of cricket is concerned.
So there's a very fascinating comment to conclude our discussion with. It's Vignesh who says the only way to make Test survive is to make individual T20 leagues to weaker countries so that they can make more money and pump them into the Test. Make individual T20 leagues to weaker countries, or take, I think he means take it to weaker countries. But then again, would there be enough people in the stands to attend it? And would people just be as interested as they are in the countries where obviously these leagues are at the moment being conducted? All right, then that's all for now. Remember to follow us across the social media platforms. Remember to follow Rob on Twitter. That might just get him interested to post more tweets more frequently.
Oh
And
yeah, sorry.
on that note, yeah, we can say goodbye.
Bye.